Making a positive impact on young people starts with building relationships.
You are now listening to the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast with your host, George Valenzuela.
This is education coach George Valenzuela. Welcome to the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast, where I provide all educators, whether instructional leaders or teachers, tips on how to be their best both personally and professionally. Now let's get into it. We're here today with Kyle Hill. Kyle is a resource lead for special education programs at Cesar Rodney Schools in Dover, Delaware, and is an educational consultant. He's also a new friend of mine. How are you?
I'm doing great. George, thanks for having me on. It's an honor to be with you, man.
I love that you excel in three major areas of your life. Number one, you put your family first. Number two, you're very dedicated to educational consulting. And three, you're very passionate about special education. Before we dive into these topics, please introduce yourself to our audience.
I'm Kyle Hill, and my lifelong dream really revolves around impacting kids. It's no more difficult than that. I spend all of my time in school systems and looking at how I can make a positive influence on the people who are working with kids with needs. So as somebody who grew up in schools, my life was bumpy in the academic and behavioral areas. Undiagnosed ADHD, I had a lot of challenges growing up, and that's why I went into special education. And now I also am the proud father of three who have their own unique needs. And now I sit on the other side of the table and work at how we're going to support the kids in my family too. I have a unique perspective that really comes from both sides of the table.
For the audience, this is my first day meeting Kyle. Now, we've had a phone conversation, and he's a great guy, but I first saw him and first heard of his work on TikTok. I'll be honest, when I saw the videos on my feed, at first I just ignored them, but it kept on showing up over and over again on my timeline, on my feed. So I said, let me watch the video. And man, was I impressed. Mr. Hill is not only passionate, but he's dynamic. His content is fresh. Every chance I get, I like and I reshare his content because I really do believe in what he's doing. And I think he's one of the most positive people online. We need more people like Kyle. We need more of his message. And I'm delighted that he's here with us today. This is the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast. And on this show, we focus on self-improvement by interviewing people who are excelling in three important areas of their lives so that we can learn from them and experience similar success. Kyle, tell us about your family and why putting them first is so important to you.
Family is my number one, period. And anything that I do in life, if it takes too much time away from my family, I have to reset and go back to it. And because we have unique needs in our house, I have a son with type 1 diabetes. We have ADHD in our house, which kids came by and honestly from their dad. We have anxiety disorders and also hearing impairment and then variety of other health challenges. My wife and I have to be fully invested. When it comes to family, that is our number one. Anything we do outside of our personal family, I focus on building a family. And that means working on building a family between school systems and obviously the parents, but also even the community and what community can do to pull it in. So when you ask me about family, that's who I am. I'm trying to be the best dad I can possibly be in a chaotic life, but a good life. And then on the professional level, I'm trying to do things in school systems where we support kids and we work with families and we work with communities. And that's also what my goal is outside of what I do outside of my day job.
I really commend you, brother. I can see and I can tell that you're the kind of person that takes lemons and makes lemonade. Ever see the show This Is Us?
Yes.
Remember Jack and the doctor on the very first episode?
Yeah.
Right? You
Yeah.
take lemons and you make lemonade. I completely commend you.
Thanks.
What's an important lesson you learned as a kid, which has helped shape who you are today?
Persevere through challenges. Things don't come easy for me and things don't come easy for my kids. And now the message I share with my kids is you can still be amazing in life, understand your personal strengths and understand where you need to improve and be honest with yourself. That takes perseverance. It takes a lot of inner building, right? Building yourself up to be able to attack the areas that you know you don't do great in. And so for me, I have some personal strengths that I do, building relationships and talking with people. And I'm pretty comfortable in my own skin and who I am. But I also have some things that are challenging, executive function challenging. I live in a world of sticky notes, right? There's a thing, there's a piece of me that I really have to consistently work on. And that was driven towards me at a young age. It came from my parents. Well, growing up as a kid who father was an elementary school teacher, and also some people who grew up in the community, coaches and so forth that worked with me, understand, you know what, this might not come easy for you, but keep at it. Keep working. Be honest with yourself about how you can self improve and stay the course and keep working with it.
Kyle, the reason why I ask these questions is because these are the things that people think about and talk about in their private moments. But lifelong learning is personal and professional growth. And I will say this: Kyle is a dynamic speaker and very engaging as he describes things. For all my superintendents, all of my principals that are watching this, all of my directors, this is a person that you want to kick off an event, that you want speaking at your event. I highly encourage you to pick Kyle, not just for his engagement and his passion, but his sincerity and his openness to speaking about the things that he's worked on and he's improved. I commend you, brother.
George, you're filling my cup. Appreciate it. I appreciate it. I'm at the point in my life where it's just helpful for me to be vulnerable and share with others the things that haven't come easy for me. Or in many cases, I won't go too deep into the challenges of my individual kids, but I can be honest enough to say we look at it from that angle too. Our life is not easy. We have to be present as parents because the challenges that we face within our home too. And then on the professional level, just being honest and saying, working with kids with academic and behavioral needs. I've worked 20 years at the elementary level before I moved to this resource job that I have. And I can tell you it's not always easy. It is bumpy along the road when you're working with kids who have more extensive needs. From my opinion, there's really no use me hiding behind a shield. I'll just tell you who I am and the challenges that I face, my family faces, and the things that I know that good people in education face because they share with me. And I appreciate that about them.
That's what educators need. They need authentic people. I can look at someone, hear them, and know if they're self actualized. And when I see a person like you, when I hear a person like you, I believe that folks like you and your message should be pushed into the forefront. People need to hear what you have to say, brother. And I'm so glad you're here. Kyle, navigating relationships with family isn't always easy. What's your secret weapon?
It's not a lot different than what we do with working with kids. It is building relationships. We work so hard. Phase one in our classrooms is working to build relationships with kids. I do a lot at the beginning of the school year with all of our brand new hires, whether they be teachers or paraprofessionals. And that's what I tell them. Phase one, we got to work to connect. And we've got to work to connect with families. That means if you've got, from my end, looking through, let's say, a tier intervention program or a special education lens, I'm looking at who are the kids that I know are going to need the most help. And what are we going
Mhm.
to do to reach out and connect with those families and build relationships? Because here's what happens. I'll give you an example. If Johnny has some behavioral challenges, you can be sure that it's not going to go off clean every single day of the school year. So the very first phone call that goes home probably shouldn't be, hey, I want to tell you the 900 things that Johnny did today to make me upset or to blow up my classroom. Instead, if you've built relationships early on in the school year, when you have to contact parents and have those harder discussions, I'm not saying it's always going to come off perfectly, but I'm telling you, they're going to be more likely to listen because they know where your heart is. And that's the key. If they know that, you know what, I'm telling you this information because I'm working with your child too. And we all are on board of trying to make them the best human they can possibly be. And so that all starts with them understanding you're in it with them. Like we are a collective team and we're working together. When you build those relationships with parents and caregivers, you make this collective team where you're working together. And so they don't feel like you're on the other side of the table, just you're doing your thing and you're versus us, right? It's not an
Mhm.
us versus them game. It's us collaboratively coming together, building a family. That's a huge piece of the puzzle when it comes to working with families. I'll give you one more quick thing. It's what are we doing to build the knowledge base of our families, whether
Mm.
it be giving them quick videos on, hey, here's some of the things you need to know before you step into an IEP meeting, or whether it be, I want to give you a little bit of information prior to you coming in for the parent teacher conference. Because what I know now, sitting on the other side of the table, is that It's intimidating. A lot of what happens in school systems, extremely intimidating. I had a guy one time, I knew him before, and somebody had asked me at the district level, "Hey, could you sit in on this meeting?" Because they weren't really sure about how it was going to play off. The parent had been a little bit on edge about certain things that were happening. And I walked in and I knew I had a little bit of a relationship with him. And I sat down and he leaned over to me and said, "This is my first meeting, and I think this is like a congressional hearing. There's 10 people here." I was like, "I hear you. I hear you.
Yeah,
Look, we
yeah,
got to do our part now to make sure that we
yeah,
build the relationship with you so you feel comfortable so that you can share and we pull you into this team." And so that's a
right.
lot of the things that I talk about with family.
So, folks out there listening, communication, provide little nuggets, little videos, little checklists, little things that people need to know so that they know what to expect. Fantastic
If I
answer.
if I could throw this at you, George, this hit home with me when 8 years ago, my son was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and that's a game changer for a family, not just for obviously, the individual child is with them for life, they're insulin dependent, you have to be all in as a family. That pushed us into our very first 504 meeting. I'd been facilitating 504s and special education meetings for years. My wife, however, this was her first attempt. And I prepped her ahead of time, and she knew the people at the table. But when we walked into that meeting and we did it, and I thought everything was fine, we left, and I said, "How'd it go?" And she broke down in tears. And she said, "I
Mm,
have no idea what just happened." They're throwing around
mm.
educational jargon, they're giving out all these educational terms, and then we pass around a piece of paper, we sign it, and I walk out thinking, "Was that even in the best interest of my child?" And that hit home to me like, wow, if she, who is the brightest person in our household, she is the one who keeps us all together. And she is definitely the brightest person that I know. If she's struggling in those situations, everybody is. Everybody's intimidated. Everybody, we need to work harder to get more information to families and pull them in to collaborate with them so it's not as intimidating, so it doesn't feel so stressful, right? So it feels like a family coming together as working as a team.
If you're watching this on YouTube or listening on Spotify or iTunes, please hit the subscribe button. Please hit the like button and share this episode with your family, friends, and colleagues who are interested in self improvement through lifelong learning. And now for a word from one of our sponsors. Are technology issues slowing you down at your school? If that's the case, look no further than 5-Star Technologies Virtual Help Desk. Their team of experts are available to support you remotely, resolving up to 40% of common issues like password resets, device connectivity, and lots more. With just a few clicks, you'll have access to their live chat from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday. Just enter your email to get started. Then you'll live chat with one of 5-Star's EdTech experts to diagnose your problem. And if their virtual help desk agent can't solve the issue completely, they will dispatch the ticket to your school's on-site tech team. Let 5-Star Technology Solutions be your support partner. Experience their virtual help desk, which is affordable, efficient, and always there for you. Please contact them at 5startech.com/contact us. Once again, 5startech.com/contact us. And for your convenience, you'll find this link in the episode show notes. Now let's transition into educational coaching and consulting. Kyle, how did you get into coaching adults?
I do a lot of my work really through podcasting and social media. Beyond that, I do some extra work working with people who I've connected with through the years. So I'm fortunate enough to be a part of a podcast network for quite a few years, and I've been able to meet amazing people from across the globe. Part of what I do and on the outside of my day job is connecting people with those people. I feel like you need to know about them. So what can I do to help you get to know them? So I say that because a lot of what I'll do now when I work with people individually or groups is talk about what are their pain points? What is it that I can offer to you to help you? Again, starting with relationships, let's have real conversations. Tell me about things that are great for you. Tell me about the things that aren't great for you. And let's see if we can deep dive into how I can help you in some capacity. And that looks a wide variety of ways. That might be I have families who will reach out to me and will say, "Hey, can you help me understand what's happening here with this?" Or I'll have educators say, "Hey, I don't know how to approach this situation. A lot of times it's like, how do we connect with families and things like that? And so I'll just jump on a Zoom with them, or we'll get together on a phone call, whatever that looks like, and whatever works for them. And then talk about how I can best give them support and ideas, and basically consulting. The thing is, though, I always go back to, it's all about relationships. Whether I'm working
Mm,
with students, whether I'm working with staff, whether I'm working with families, whether I'm working with, I just had a webinar for how to podcast with a bunch of educators. I'm from Delaware, so we had a state group that wanted, they were all interested in creating their own network. What's phase one is, I want to get to know you. Like, even before we dive into how to podcast and all these things, I want to know where you're at. What do you do? Because if I don't go to that level, I'm not really going to be, I'm just the person talking you, giving you information. If I can get deeper, figure out where you're at and what you need help with on a personal level, on a professional level, whatever the challenges are, then I will be more apt to be able to help you.
that's fantastic. Kyle, there's someone watching you, watching your social channels, listening to you right now, and they want to do what you do. What is one piece of advice, one golden nugget that you would give them?
It only takes one person to listen to make an impact. So I've recently
Mm,
had a guy reach out to me because he was struggling with, he's a podcaster. He does amazing work, and he's been podcasting for a while, and he's talking to me about the numbers, and he was worried about, I'm just not getting as many downloads. And I said, but you have some. And he looked at me and I said, it's not always the big number. Sometimes it's the number. You can make an
mm.
impact with one person. It doesn't have to be thousands. It doesn't have to be the algorithm exploded and put your stuff from social media from 3 followers to 300 followers. The 3 followers can hear your message and then use that to help them. I have to remind myself of this too. You'll look at like analytics in podcasting, or you look at followers in social media, and you're like, oh boy, this didn't hit well. This didn't go where I was hoping it. And I have to remind myself of that message too. Really, impact doesn't have to be huge as far as hitting thousands and thousands of people. It can come back to one. And the other thing I would share is this: patience. Like, it all takes a lot of patience. When you're working in any of these kinds of digital worlds, it takes a lot of time to build. And although everybody
Mm.
wants to be like the person who shows up on your YouTube feed who's talking about how you go from here to here in like seconds, the vast majority of us do not. A good friend of mine, George, shared with me recently about sometimes when you're a positive person, the algorithm doesn't like you as much. And he's spot on. It's so true, which makes it even harder. It makes it harder to get your message out there. So it takes patience. It takes time and patience to build it.
But I've learned this though, it just takes for one to go viral and
Yeah.
to go where it's supposed to go. What I mean by that is the people that need the message. And then they all go viral after that.
Yes.
Just keep doing what you're doing. Yes, if you want sponsors, they are looking at the analytics. They will need to look at your downloads and your numbers. However, just be true to self and put out a message that is consistent with your brand. My brand is lifelong learning defined for self improvement. Lifelong learning is personal and professional growth. If you listen to Kyle, if you listen to my other interviewees, their message aligns to my brand. That's why they're on the show. If their message didn't align to the brand, they would not be on the show. And we can still be cool, we can still be friends, but what you're talking about, that doesn't work here because that's not who my audience is. That's an
That is
important
it.
thing to understand as well.
That's a great point. So what you learn is, as you go through this journey, let's take podcasting, for example, you start to get people who reach out to you like, hey, I'd love to be a guest on your show. And then, but then you have to look at it as, are they the right fit? Like for me, in
Right.
Recharge Family, my both of my podcasts, the one I have for parents, the one I have for educators, all around recharging people, right? Like trying to
Mm.
build you back up, because life can be hard sometimes. Educators, it can be hard sometimes. And working as a parent, especially parents with kids with needs, super challenging. So I work around that idea of keeping people recharged. And if I look at somebody who wants to come in and be on the show, I then have to take a second and look, is that a right fit for my audience? So what you're saying is spot on, George.
I'm a big fan of Ed Milet. Ed Milet has a podcast. He interviews entrepreneurs who are excelling in every aspect of their life, not just business. And if they're not excelling, they're working on it actively. Ed, on his show, he brings up family, he brings up finances, entrepreneurship, systems, tools, frameworks, resources for excelling in those different avenues. I listen to his show. I learn a lot from other entrepreneurs. And I believe in modeling the success of people that you admire, of people that are where you want to be. So on my show, you don't even have to be an educator, but you have to be excelling in your business. But also, you have to be actively excelling in your family life and in something that you're passionate about. Those are the things that really contribute to lifelong learning and being overall well rounded people. Those are the type of people I want on my show. If you're excelling just in business and you're great at speaking into a camera, but your relationships are flimsy, if you're not really passionate about what you do, it's more of an attention grabber or a money grab, then this is the wrong show for those folks.
You are speaking my language, George. I'm right along with you there.
And now for a word from one of our sponsors. If you're a STEM and PBL teacher like me, you're always on the lookout for new project ideas and resources. You know George does PBL, and I'm telling you, look no further than SmartLab. SmartLab really has a fresh take on STEM and PBL. I'm proud to be a partner, and they sponsor the podcast. But just don't take my word for it. Check out what other educators are saying about SmartLab.
When students enter into SmartLab, they are allowed to think outside of traditional norms.
It gives them a lot of agency. They feel empowered and important. I think that's one of the biggest benefits of the SmartLab environment and the way the project process is set up.
SmartLab becomes this place where they can do those things and have the time and space to communicate better and even deal with social emotional stuff. They're having a bad day. A SmartLab's a place where we can change the pace of what they're learning to match their mental needs for the day. And that comes back tenfold later on when they want to be there and they want to learn and they want to do stuff and they feel safe and they feel like they can get the things they need.
That's one of the big benefits of being in more of a collaborative environment is it makes you have to work. It makes you have to be accountable.
Please look in this episode's show notes for a link to connect with SmartLab. Now let's talk about your passion for special education. Kyle, tell us more about that.
As I said previously, like school was bumpy for me to say the least. I had academic challenges, some behavioral challenges. Now, I'm not saying I was the disrespectful kid. I was more like the class clown, right? I enjoyed making people laugh. And some of my teachers appreciated that. And then I had plenty of educators who did not. Let me give you first and second grade as an example. Pretty sure those two teachers didn't smile at me all year, right? And then I went to third grade and I had amazing Mrs. Lane, who for the first time showed me that the importance of making connections, because she took half a second to realize I'm going to ask this guy what he's into. At that time, baseball, soccer, football, anything with a ball, right? And even though she probably didn't know anything about baseball, she at least faked it like she was interested in it and at least tried. And from my end, that made a world of difference. And I'm not telling you I was a saint for Mrs. Lane all third grade, but I will tell you, I worked harder for that lady than anybody else in all of elementary school because the connection, the relationship she was trying to build with me was true. And she was really trying to get to know me. And she also laughed at my jokes occasionally, which for the first time in school meant a whole lot to me. Fast forward, I had another guy in high school. His name was Mr. Tubbs, and he impacted me for similar way, but also a different way. He was great at building relationships with his students. And then he also was great at understanding that sometimes you got to give kids breaks. And so sometimes it would be like, I got an F on a test. And he would say, I think you can do more. Do you think you can do more? Probably. Did you study much? Not too much. You want another shot? Okay. And then I would go do it and I would go try. And it made a world of difference. And it wasn't just for me. There was when I was in fourth grade, I was part of a dynamic reading group. We were called the Crows. Unfortunately, our teacher had all these birds for reading groups. There were the Orioles and the Cardinals and the Blue Jays. And then there was us. We were the crows. And now I wear it like a
Oh
badge of
God.
honor. So if you're a reading teacher, pick something a little bit a little bit
Yeah,
easier
don't do
than
that.
crows, right? Like, don't do that. But I now wear it as a badge of honor. Bring that up is because there were a lot of us, the crows group, who we traveled together for years, and Mr. Tubbs made an impact on all of us. I saw one kid in our class. I'm not sure he cared about anything in school until his sophomore year was that year. And all of a sudden, Mr. Tubbs connected with us, made learning fun and lively, and got to know us and cut us some breaks to pull us in and motivate us. It made a world of difference. So I say that because when I went into special education, I wanted to be that. I wanted to be the
Mm.
person who was connecting with kids. I wanted to be the person who understood the challenges that they face. And probably as somebody who had his own unique challenges, I had a little bit different perspective. I packaged that for 20 years at the elementary level as a special education teacher and co-taught classrooms and self-contained classrooms. And I found that it all starts with phase one. I got to build relationships with these kids, and I've got to figure out ways to help them understand themselves. See, here's the difference for
Mm.
me. I didn't have that as far as like, here's some strategies that are going to help you. But I was lucky because I figured it out myself. I went to college, and college was awesome for me. Things went well because I started to figure out my brain. Fast forward to my career, I realized I've got to help these kids figure out their brains, how they best learn, what kind of supports they need. It's not ideal for them to figure it out on their own. The most ideal situation is, hey, I think you learned from this strategy. Let's try it and let's see how it goes. And I'm going to support you in this. And it works. Then now the next level is you need to understand that's a strategy that works for you. So you need to advocate for that so you can utilize that strategy moving forward. So I'm going to help them learn about themselves so that they can
Hmm.
use those skills to move forward. It's really all about understanding the individual. So all of my work in special education revolves around that core philosophy, relationship building and helping them understand themselves, because a lot of the times they don't. I didn't. I didn't until I went to college and I was like, let me try this. And it worked. And I started to piece things together. But again, that's not ideal. The ideal thing is we help kids, special education or general education students or kids in tiered situations and MTSS. We help them figure out themselves and what they need to be successful. And I preach that now, my own kids who have their own unique challenges too.
Kyle, there's nothing I can say to that. That was perfectly stated for the audience. Knowledge of self is so important. Knowledge of self is knowing who you are, how you think, your metacognition, your thinking about thinking, and self awareness is knowing why you do what you do. Fantastic stuff. Inclusion in education, and rightly so, isn't going anywhere. What would you tell an educator that has special education students in his or her classroom, but doesn't understand 504 plans and doesn't understand inclusiveness? What advice would you give them?
Hopefully, you have people to lean on. A
Mm.
lot of what I do is work with newer educators. And the first thing I'm going to tell them about self improvement, it's really look at who you have available, mentors. Hopefully, we're partnering them up with a mentor who can help them with this. And if not, find the people in your school who can help support you. And that relationship is going to be super powerful. And when I say find the people who can support you, a lot of the times that needs to be somebody that you can go to and be honest about your challenges and you feel like they're not judging you for it. I'm going to be honest. I'm struggling with putting this paperwork together for a 504, or I'm
Mm.
struggling with trying to figure out how we're going to build supports for this kid who has a whole lot of needs and I don't know where to go. I was
Mm.
super, super lucky to be dropped into an amazing situation as a new teacher. We had a school that was struggling with academics and behavioral support, but we were trending upward because our principal built an amazing community of staff that cared about each other. So I had so many people I could go to on that staff to ask questions and feel like they're not judging me. Like they're okay with me coming to this question. The mentality is we're going to work on this together. And so that's the phase that is super important. It's the layer that's super important for anybody in education. You don't have to be new. Anyone, just being comfortable enough to say, I need some help with this. Is there somebody who can help? That might be leadership team. It might be the teacher who's next door. It might be a paraprofessional who works one-on-one with a student and has maybe some of the similar supports built into how they're working with their student. It could be anybody. You have to be willing to ask for help sometimes, and that's hard for a lot of people. Flip that, you're more willing to ask for help to people who you feel like are approachable. If you've got
Mm.
a building filled with approachable people, you are more likely to have people who are comfortable to ask questions like, how do I get more information about this? So, as far as how we go about gathering information to improve ourselves in special education, for example, maybe there is someone who oversees supports in your school. In Delaware, we call those case managers, sometimes educational diagnosticians. They have some extra information that they can share that will be super valuable because they've got experiences to draw on. Those would be amazing people to go to help you build your knowledge base of how to go through anything that you need to get better at. I will say though, sometimes even though they're in a position that oversees everything, they might not be the best person for you. You have to go to somebody you feel comfortable with.
We are now winding down with Kyle, and we're going to get into the quick fire question round of the podcast. Kyle, what are your top 3 ed tech tools?
I want to throw 2 out that I use within my school district as somebody who oversees interventions. Braining Camp is math manipulative system online, and I stumbled on them when we were in the pandemic, and I needed to be able to get some tools to educators who were teaching on the other side of the screen. And what I've learned is they're just a really good group of people who just want to help, and they constantly take feedback. So I can reach out to their leadership team there, and it's not just me, it's people all across the country, and they tweak things every year, but they build manipulative boards that kids can work on that you can use to model instruction for math. The other thing I was thinking about with reading is a program that's been around for ages, decades, but it helps to improve reading fluency. It's called Read Naturally Live. Way back in the day, I actually had groups doing Read Naturally Live in small groups on cassette tapes because it's all about modeled reading. Luckily, now it's online. It's a lot easier. It doesn't take a lot of para-educator or teacher support to go through that program. So it can be something that the educators use and help them build their individual improvement without them being there 100% of the time. And then the other thing I was thinking about, what I do with videos is I was lucky enough to stumble on CapCut. And that is really what I'd use to push out a lot of my stuff, anything video related. It's super easy to use, and it's got a lot of tools. And whether you have the paid package or the free package, there's enough there for you to be able to get what you need to be able to edit and cut and put things out the way that you want to put them out.
Kyle, what is your favorite education book on special education?
This one's not just special education, educators in general, but this is without a doubt my favorite right now because it speaks volumes to me. It definitely will resonate with our special education educators out there because what we know is there's never enough time and you are all in, whether it be building supports and helping with instruction, lesson planning, grading, progress monitoring, or paperwork end, which can be a mountain. And so I've stumbled on the book called Educator Bandwidth, and that's by Holm and Keiss. It is all about just understanding what you're capable of doing without creating overload on yourself. I need this. I'm a yes person. And so I have administrators who reach out to me and say, hey, can you do this project for me? Yes. Teachers reach out and say, hey, can you help me with this? Yes. Paraeducators ask me this all the time. Can you help me with this and this? And my answer is always yes. I'll get you on the calendar, but I have a hard time like putting up boundaries. What ends up happening though, I end up working hours and hours and hours. Now, mind you, in my head, I've got time after school that's fully focused on my family, and I will not dive into anything beyond the extra work that I have to do, whether it be at my day job or what I do outside. Is I won't dive into that until, let's say, 9 o'clock at night. So what ends up happening is I'm up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm going to work on some stuff early, and then 9 o'clock till 12:30, and then the cycle continues. I sometimes bring that on myself because I always say yes. This book dives into understanding what you actually can handle, and I desperately need it. And I know a lot of our special educators do too, because There's so much of what they do. It just involves a lot of extra layers of work outside of just instruction.
Kyle, I picked 3 things I love and respect about you. And just to recap for the audience, you put your family first, you're a great education consultant and coach, and you're very passionate about special education. Is there anything we didn't cover that you want people watching or listening to know about you?
So obviously, I said I do podcasts. So I have Recharged Family podcast, which is really all about trying to help families, parents, caregivers, especially those who have kids with unique needs. And then I have the Recharged Educators, all about trying to recharge educators their battery so that they can go on to do amazing things. But the one thing people don't usually know is that I've built virtual events. Because I've been able to connect with so many people, I've been able to create these events that go off every summer. This year we're expanding. So we have an educators virtual bash, a parents virtual bash, a community virtual bash, and I bring in educators from across the globe, just like
I'm going to be on
George.
it this year.
Yes, I'm excited about. And they provide just these quick, powerful workshops. And that's amazing. But that's not the only goal. Actually, the main goal is I want to help people connect with amazing people like George. That's my ultimate goal, because it's great to sit and watch a virtual workshop, but it's another thing if I can connect you with somebody who can help you moving forward, whether it be podcasts, books, social media. They can consistently give you information that's going to help. So this summer coming up, I'm super excited. We've expanded. We now have educators, but we've also moved into bringing in people who are going to help families and then community members. And that might be working with athletic coaches, youth organizations, employers who work with teens, mentors. The idea here is everybody's coming together. A ton of people are coming together, really good people, and they're going to work to give information to help kids so they can be more successful in school and then other aspects of the life, whatever that is. And that's all free, which I'm excited about because of our work with sponsorships.
Kyle, this is the part of the show where I give you your flowers. I don't believe in telling people how I feel about them when they're gone. So here goes. Kyle, you are a kind, honest, and reflective man. You're very passionate in what you do. It shines through. You're making a huge impact. You're helping people. You may not be seeing the impact always, but your impact will be felt way long after you're gone. I'm proud to know you. I consider you a friend now. I hope we stay in touch. I admire your message, and I want to see your voice amplified all over the world.
Man, George, I appreciate that. That's amazing. You have filled my cup. I'm walking out of here feeling even greater than when we started.
All right, let's put it in the freaking universe. Kyle, how can people contact you so that you can come to their conference, their event, their school, and help them learn more about inclusion, special education, and connecting with parents?
It's pretty basic. Rechargefamily.com is where you can find all my stuff, and I'm out in all the socials at Recharge Family.
That's it for this episode. Until next time, this is the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Lifelong Learning Defined podcast with George Valenzuela.